I'm Jennifer Briney, and I am the host of the Congressional Dish podcast, filling in for David today while he travels to Vegas, where he will be reporting for you for the rest of the week. But getting back to the story that I started in the last segment, in late March, Congress very quickly passed and President Trump signed a 2,232-page law that funded the government 6 months late for 2018. Because the bill was so long and rushed through votes so quickly, there were provisions in it that many in Congress didn't even know about. And one of these provisions was buried at the end of the law, and it was called the Cloud Act. The Cloud Act is essentially yet another erosion of privacy rights of individuals, not just in the United States this time, but around the world. Now, the backstory on this law is that the Supreme Court was considering arguments in a case that questioned the reach of U.S. law enforcement into the foreign operations of U.S. tech companies. Because 5 years ago, Microsoft was served with a warrant for emails as part of a drug trafficking investigation. Microsoft handed over some information, like the metadata type information, but they refused to give the government the content of the target's emails because they were stored at a Microsoft data center in Ireland, where the target lived when he opened his Microsoft email account. Microsoft told the government that to get the contents of the emails, the government should go to Irish officials, which shouldn't have been all that difficult because the United States and Ireland already have signed a mutual legal assistance treaty, which allows them to work together for law enforcement purposes. But the Justice Department wanted the emails handed to them directly by Microsoft, and so this went to court. But instead of letting the courts decide, someone in Congress, probably Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah because he wrote it, but someone slipped the Cloud Act into the must-sign omnibus, which essentially blew up the Supreme Court case. What the Cloud Act does is that it essentially says that warrants like the one issued to Microsoft in the United States would apply to data stored overseas, but the new law lets tech companies challenge the warrants in court if they think that complying would break the law of the country where the data is stored. And I guess that's a good thing. But the thing is that the law went further than that. It also allows foreign governments to get the contents of communications stored in the United States. Now, an order issued by a foreign government will have to identify a specific person, account, address, or personal device, and the order has to be for a fixed, limited amount of time. And one good thing here is that these orders by foreign governments are subject to review by our courts. But the question then becomes, what foreign countries would be eligible for this partnership? Because not all countries are great countries when it comes to civil liberties, human rights, like who can we trust? Well, that's where this law gets more troubling because it allows the U.S. Justice Department to enter into executive agreements with other countries to set up this information sharing relationship. Before the Cloud Act, if a foreign government wanted to get this kind of electronic data from tech companies for an investigation, they would have had to have signed one of those mutual legal assistance treaties with the U.S. government, which requires ratification by the U.S. Senate. But the Cloud Act, which is now law, allows the Attorney General almost single-handedly to sign executive agreements with other countries that would allow foreign governments to get data hosted in the United States, just as long as their target is not American or living in the United States. All the Attorney General would have to do is submit a certification to Congress that the country is basically cool with civil liberties. But the certifications written by the Attorney General are prohibited from being reviewed in our courts. And so basically, if the Attorney General says the other government is trustworthy, that's it. Case closed. So if Jeff Sessions says the other government is trustworthy, that's it. Case closed. And the only thing that Congress can do to stop this country is a good spying partner determination by the Attorney General is enact a joint resolution disapproving of the determination, which is a very similar process to passing a bill. And that's a high hurdle in a Congress that can't even fund the government properly. And so basically, the Cloud Act really lowered the bar for intergovernmental partnerships for sharing the contents of digital data, because these relationships used to have to be created with legit treaties ratified by 2/3 of the Senate. Now it's up to Jeff Sessions or whoever comes after him. And that's a huge change. And then there's the way it was done. Because the Cloud Act, before hitchhiking its way into law on the government funding law, well, it was only introduced in both the House and the Senate. And the significance of that is that there was never a single hearing with experts in this Congress. This bill never passed through a committee. It was never debated in or passed by itself through the House, and it was never debated in or passed by itself through the Senate. It went immediately from zero to law. And this is why funding the government in these big monster omnibus laws is so dangerous, because you never know when stuff like this is going to get slipped in.
Today's episode of the program is made possible in part by Cody, which is an innovative new cryptocurrency and online payment platform that wants to revolutionize how we send and receive online payments. Cody stands for Currency of the Internet, and the goal is to build an infrastructure for online payments that's simple, transparent, trustworthy, instantaneous, as well as scalable. And today's payment solutions have a number of different trust and usability problems, whether it's between consumers or between businesses or between consumers and businesses. And Cody wants to solve a lot of those problems through their currency and platform, which, unlike a lot of the cryptos and blockchains that are out there, have actually been created specifically and solely to be used for payments. Cody has set out to do this by using innovative base layer protocol in the form of a directed acyclic graph-based ledger built from transactions connected through time by harnessing trust-based algorithms. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can find out more about Cody and their initial coin offering in the links below this video. This is not financial advice, and everybody should do their own research.